Hi, thank you for joining us. This is our weekly Bible study. I am your host, Dr. Derek A. Reeves. Let's dive right into our lesson. We're still dealing with the model prayer, the prayer that Jesus revealed of the functionality on how individuals should pray. The apostle said, teach us to pray. And he says, pray in like manner. I am your host, Dr. Derek A. Reeves, and let's dive right into our lesson for today. We're still in Matthew chapter 6, and we're going to deal with verse 13 today. This is a very important thing because it gives to us an understanding of events that may happen and that the enemy is trying to bring about and that the enemy is trying to move us into positionally to keep us from being blessed and succeeding. Matthew 6:13 reads on this wise, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. And so the major thing I want to deal with in this session, and we're going to cut this in half, and lead us not into temptation. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. So that's a mouthful right there. So let's dive right in. I found this very interesting because he uses the word eisphero. And so eisphero means to bring us or to lead us into something, to bring to the ears of anyone. In other words, don't allow us to even hear something that can move us away. Lord, as you're leading us, then even though we desire to have attention of specific people that we know they're sowing into our lives, and these individuals mean us no good, he says, Lord, don't lead us there. You overcome us, because believers should be submitted to God and submitted to the power of the Holy Ghost. He says, let us now hear you to the point where you can lead and guide us. So even what we call the ear gate, even what we call the sound integration of perspective. Don't carry us inward, or don't bring us to a point where anything can come through all of our gates, anything can come through all of our scenarios where our senses are operable to bring information into our mind. So God, lead us not. Even if we go our own way, you lead us into another place. You bear us, you bring us, you move us, you move situations out of the way. Even when we make the wrong choice, Lord, help us to escape these things. And then he says, deliver us. First of all, lead us not into temptation. This term for temptation is the word perasmos, and it means a putting to proof by experiment of good, an experience of evil solicitation or discipline or provocation, adversity. And so he says, don't lead us into a place where we will experience someone trying to put us to the proof that we're not able to handle, where we are trying to experience good, but yet because we don't understand the landscape in which we're in, many times our good is not good enough because we have not matriculated into a state of maturity to understand the wisdom and the manipulation of the enemy trying to destroy us. So lead us not into temptation where people are soliciting us, where people specifically are used by the adversary as they're trying to try us. It's one thing to be tried of God, but you have to be careful when people are trying to try your faith. They're trying to try your commitment with God. And in many cases, they will say, well, if you love me, you will do this. We have to return to our first love, and we have to remain by the side of our first love, who is Jesus. And so, Lord, don't even let our fidelity, our integrity, or our virtue be tried in such a way by the devil, by those who would lead us into sin. And so he speaks of an internal thing. And that means we have to be able and we have to be willing for God to deal with us about the internal things, the internal feelings, the internal desires, and the internal perspective of our will. Father, lead us not into temptation. Lead us not into those things that will override and overcome our senses to the point where we can no longer submit to you, to the point where we no longer desire to submit to you. In many cases, we receive things, we hear things, and it's not always with the audible ear. If you begin to think, you can actually hear that in your head. And so there is a hearing that goes beyond the ears. There is a hearing that is actually a mental interception of the thoughts that come into your mind. He says, Father, lead us not into the inner temptation, those things that come as a result of information that may have come through things we've seen, things we've touched, things we've heard, or things that were injected into our thoughts. And in many cases, we can inject things into our unconscious by making a perspective decision. And as we make this decision, then we start thoughts moving. And these thoughts, even if they are of our own design, because flesh is not accountable to God, it doesn't want to be. Now, if flesh can do that, can you imagine what will happen when flesh couples with a demonic spirit of thought from the evil one? And so what he's saying then, Father, protect me internally. It's not what always goes into the man that defiles him, but it's what goes in, we entertain, and it comes or proceeds forth out of the heart. Remember, there must be something that goes into the heart that can provoke the heart and the emotions to move you. Emotions, according to the Latin definition of it, it is ex movere. And ex movere simply means, that which moves us out. Emotions then are responses and reactions to a stimuli. It causes movement in thoughts, movements in behavior, and sometimes even physical motion that leads us down the path of destruction. Father, lead us not into temptation. It starts in the heart. James said, if any man lust, or he gives in to lust, it's because it's a desire of his own heart. And so we have to detox. We have to consistently examine ourselves. And then he says, but deliver us from evil. Now, this term deliverance is the word, we would think that it's soteria, but it's actually the word ruomehi. Ruomehi simply means to drag out of danger, to rescue. And I like that term because he says, Lord, drag us out of danger, the danger of setting ourselves up, of opening our gates to receive information that we can't handle, that we can't process in a spiritual way. Drag us out of it. interrupt our thoughts of the day because we give you permission. Deliver us from evil. Deliver us from poneros. When he speaks of poneros, he speaks of that which is hurtful, that which is evil, that which in effect or influence can cause us to have a differing opinion of who and what God is. Something that will cause us to be derelict in our love, our grace, and commitment to God. He speaks of things that will bring us into guiltiness, mischievous things, malice, guilt. And so he says, Lord, lead us not into temptation. Don't allow us to go into things where we can hear inwardly and begin to concoct inner thoughts that will lead us away from you. But drag us from the evil. Drag us, if you have to, oh God, upset or upstage or change or shift a relationship. If you have to break it up, then Lord, drag us out of the evil. I thank you for joining us. I am your host, Dr. Derek A. Reeves, and this is our weekly Bible study. Join us next time. And remember, Jesus is coming back again. Don't miss his appearance. God bless.